This week's Torah portion of Mishpatim contains within it many laws regarding human nature and human behavior. One of the laws speaks to the situation in Israel that exists today, that is dividing that country. And it's a law, strangely enough, that has to do with the donkey. The Torah tells us if you see the donkey of someone you hate crouching under its burden, refrain from helping him, you shall help along with him. In the literal translation, the sentence seems to have a contradiction. If you see the donkey of someone you hate crouching under its burden, refrain from helping him, and then you shall help along with him. So what do? Do you help or do you not help? To this, Rashi and other commentators come along and tell us bitamia with a question mark. The first part of the sentence should be read with a question mark. If you see the donkey of someone you hate crouching under its burden, you refrain from helping him? No, you shall help along with him. Even though he's your enemy, it shouldn't even enter your mind that you should not help him lift that donkey. No, you have to help him repeatedly. Bad enough that he's your enemy. Don't make matters worse. Hope that someday things can be better. But the same Rashi, who said that the first part of the verse where we are told refrain from helping him should in fact be read with a question mark, comes along and tells us that in fact there are times when the sentence should be read just as it is, without a question mark. There are times when in fact you're not obligated to help lift the donkey. When? Well, one of the times Rashi tells us is if you're an older person. An older person should not feel obligated to have to, God forbid, break his back or hip helping to lift up the donkey. But there are other times when you don't have to help, times that speak to the current situation in Israel. I once saw the book of Torah by Rabbi Yisachar Friend, who in writing about this verse refers to the commentary of a famous Polish rabbi at the beginning of the 1600s, known as the Kli Yakar, who says, you know when you're not required to give help when a person's donkey has fallen? When the person does not do anything to help himself. The Kli Yakar points out that a careful study of the words on the verse tells us, when do you have to help him? When it is help along with him. When the owner is doing his share. But the owner of the donkey is not allowed to wait for another Jew to come along and say to him, since the Torah tells you to help unload my donkey, go ahead and do it while I sit here. No. The Torah advises us to help our neighbor Emo along with him, together with the effort he himself makes to meet his own needs. Which brings us to one of the most divisive issues the people of Israel confront: the exemption of Haredim, of ultra-Orthodox men from serving in the army. Surveys show that a large segment of the general Israeli population resent the ultra-Orthodox almost as much as they do the Arabs. The fact is, the root of it boils down to this issue. with the ultra-Orthodox not serving in the Israeli army. Israel's army binds together all the elements of the Israeli population, all except Israeli Arabs and the ultra-Orthodox. The Arabs are exempted because it felt it would be unfair to put them in a position having fight against their fellow Arab. The ultra-Orthodox are exempted because right from the start, the Haredi leaders did not want their children to mix with the masses, to have their way of life threatened. They claimed that it was just important for Israel's security to have their children learning Torah in the yeshiva while mainstream Israeli children were serving in the army. At first, this affected a few hundred ultra-Orthodox sports. But now we're talking about tens and tens of thousands who are exempted from the army. I don't have to tell you how that makes the typical Israeli mother feel at 3 o'clock in the morning, knowing that her son is standing guard at the Gaza border or the border of Lebanon, while the ultra-Orthodox mother's son is sleeping comfortably in the dormitory of his yeshiva. That's only the beginning of the problem. The exemption of the ultra-Orthodox can only take place if the ultra-Orthodox are, in fact, studying in the yeshiva. And if, in fact, they are studying in the yeshiva, this means that they cannot be working. And if they, in fact, they are not working, who's to support them? Who? The government. The government, which is forced to provide ultra-Orthodox families with food and medical housing subsidies to the tune of hundreds of millions, if not billions of shekels, and to subsidize the ultra-Orthodox schools where their children are taught to perpetuate this way of life. So here's the picture. A young Israeli man who delays going to college and serves 2 years in the army, he gets out, wants to go to college, he gets very little government support. When he gets married and has children, gets very little government support. But an ultra-Orthodox young man who never serves in the army, has countless children, does not lift a finger to earn a living, he gets supported by the government. If the government wants to keep the ultra-Orthodox parties as part of its coalition. Do you blame the rest of Israeli society for resenting this and them? Ever since October 7th and the Hamas attack, there have been some movement on this issue. Several thousand Haredim have volunteered to serve reserve duty, and this has excited many secular Israelis. But on the other hand, it's only a very, very small minority, which does not include any of the leaders of the Haredi community and most all of their followers. And things are only going to get worse. As more Israeli men are going to be called up for extended army service, which means they're going to be away from their jobs and their families for a longer period of time, affecting the economy and family life, all the while knowing that if the Haredi community was serving, the rest of Israeli soldiers would be able to be employed and at home. Why should they have to carry the burden when the Haredim are not doing any of the heavy lifting? Is this going to change? Who knows? All we know is what history teaches us, two lessons. Es ist schwer zu sein ein Yid. It's not easy being a Jew, but es ist gut zu sein ein Yid. It's so good being Jewish. Shabbat Shalom.